I have got something so incredibly cool for today's video. This is one of the coolest pieces of equipment I've ever featured on this channel. It's a Sony model DNW-A25 Betacam SX VCR, portable VCR, from 2001. How did I get my hands on such an awesome piece of historical broadcasting equipment? This did see service at a major television broadcaster here in Canada. It's retired now, of course. Let me tell you the story. Do you remember that video I talked about the local television station I discovered that still has an analog transmitter? And we took a trip down there, town about 20 minutes away. I brought my Sony Watchman with me, and we saw that Sony Watchman being able to pick up this the signal from this station. I work there now. Well, not exactly work. I volunteer there. Basically, long story short, between a mutual friend of myself and the station manager, I met the station manager and the other regulars who work there, and they spoke to me and learned what skills I have and what interests I have, and they were like, hey, you're somebody we would really like to come help us out here. So, long story short, I'm now volunteering there 2 nights a week, helping out with the live shows that they broadcast on each of those nights. And it's friggin' awesome. I've been helping out in the control room so far, and it's just so cool. I've learned so much, and it's really fun and fulfilling. And it's community television, this tiny television station that gets very little funding. And I think it's such a nice and worthy cause to donate my skills and time to. I really love it. They are interested in making me a local reporter for here, getting me a field camera, and whenever something goes on around here, I can go out and shoot it rather than they having to drive the 20 minutes here to do it themselves. And I'm really excited for when I get to start doing that. But yeah, that's the story. And the station manager is kind of a tech head, and I guess I'm the first person that the station has seen in a long time that has similar tech interests, and he has learned that I'm into all this old video equipment, which he thinks is really cool. And he's got a graveyard, not really graveyard, but a retirement home, if you will, of retired broadcast equipment, stuff that the station used to use but doesn't anymore because they've gone fully digital. They're not fully high definition yet, but they are fully digital, tapeless. And he's just got all this old equipment around, and he thinks it's really cool that I'm into this stuff. And this he had lying around. This originally belonged to a major Canadian broadcaster. Gave it to him, donated it for the station here. And he never used it. He never even tested it. He just never had a use for it. So he gave it to me, and I think that's so cool. And he gave me a tape that I can use with it. And that's the story. And this thing works perfectly. I had to do just a couple of minor things to get it functioning 100%. But it works, and it works pretty much perfectly, and I'm just so happy. This thing is so cool, and I am really excited to show you guys today. So, I've never featured something like this on my channel. What is Betacam SX? Well, to talk about Betacam SX, we need to talk about Betacam in general. And to talk about Betacam, we need to start all the way back at Betamax. Those of you who watch this channel probably know what Betamax is. Sony's home video cassette format, released in 1975, a couple of years before VHS. Lost the competition with VHS because VHS had cheaper VCRs, more VCRs, and by the early to mid 80s, Betamax was pretty much dead. It had a very insignificant market share. Well, in 1982, Sony released a professional version of Betamax called Betacam. Betacam had higher video quality than Betamax. First of all, Betacam ran much faster. A standard Betamax cassette, which can hold 3 hours, will record just 30 minutes on a Betacam camcorder or VCR. So Betacam tape runs 6 times faster than Betamax. Betacam also recorded a component video signal, whereas the signal recorded on a Betamax VCR was composite in nature. So Betacam and Betamax, while they used physically the same cassettes, the recordings themselves were not compatible. Betacam was a separate format. Betacam used the same tape as Betamax, a ferric oxide tape, so Sony was okay with you using Betamax tapes on Betacam equipment, and vice versa. But they never really recommended it just because Betamax tapes weren't designed to run at the faster speed of Betacam. In 1986, Sony updated Betacam with Betacam SP, which increased the video quality a bit more. The most significant change was that it changed the tape. Betacam SP uses a metal tape instead of a ferric oxide tape. So now you couldn't use Betamax or Betacam tape on Betacam SP machines just because the tape wasn't designed to handle the amount of signal that Betacam SP shoves onto a tape. So Betacam SP came out in 1986, and it was by far the most popular variant of Betacam. Betacam SP held up into the 2010s, which is incredible, and the equipment was found to be very reliable as well. You see a lot of Betacam SP VCRs from the 90s that are still working just fine today. Down at the TV station, we have a Betacam SP VCR. It's not in use anymore, it's retired now, but it still gets used once in a great while when someone wants to pull something off a Betacam SP tape. Still works just fine. So yeah, Betacam SP held on for a long time. And as you can see, this is a Betacam SP tape. Now, why would I have a Betacam SP tape for a Betamax SX VCR? We'll get to that in a moment. So in 1993, Betacam SP was doing super well. Sony released digital Betacam, which was a huge change. Digital Betacam records a digital signal. If I remember right, it is a DV specification signal onto a Betacam SP tape. There were also specific digital Betacam tapes, but like Digital 8 and High 8, there's no issue with using a Betacam SP tape in a digital Betacam VCR. It's more or less the same grade of tape. So that was digital Betacam. And in 1996, Sony introduced Betacam SX, which was an upgrade to digital Betacam. So Betacam SX, which is what this machine is digital. It's not analog. Betacam SX is very different from digital Betacam because the video is actually compressed. It's MPEG-2 video. It's not DV. So it's compressed video, which is very interesting in a broadcast environment. But it's still, pretty much lossless quality. It's not an actual lossless signal, but the quality is good enough you would never be able to tell it was compressed. So yeah, MPEG-2 video, and because the data stream is much lighter than in digital Betacam, for the first time in Betacam's history, the tape can now run much slower. Betacam SX runs the tape much slower than Betacam, Betacam SP, or digital Betacam. So a tape that runs for just 30 minutes in Betacam, Betacam SP, or digital Betacam now runs for an hour on Betacam SX. So that was Betacam SX, which had its reign in the late 90s, early 2000s, I think into the mid 2000s too. But it wasn't the final evolution of Betacam. In 1997, 1 year after Betacam SX, Sony introduced HD Cam, which is exactly what it sounds like. HD cam is a 1080i high definition signal recorded onto a Betacam size tape. Very, very cool. So we even had high definition video on Betacam. Then in 2003, Sony released the final iteration of Betacam, HD SR, which took HD cam and then increased the bitrate a bit, just to make it a bit less compressed. And according to Wikipedia, HD SR is still used in broadcast television production today. I don't know if that's true or not, but if it is, that's really cool. But it was Betacam SP that definitely became the biggest standard in the broadcast industry. Although it took a while to get there. For the first several years of Betacam's life, people considered Betacam to just be sort of what to put in camcorders. They didn't consider it good enough to be actually used as like a mastering format. So people would take the Betacam footage that they had recorded on their Betacam camcorders, and when they were done editing it, the final version of the video would be recorded onto either U-matic or Type-C videotape. But by the mid-90s and definitely the late 90s, with Betacam SP and really good Betacam SP VCRs, people finally considered Betacam to be a master quality videotape format. So they ditched their U-matic machines and they ditched their Type-C videotape machines, and everybody just started using Betacam for everything. Now, 30 minutes is definitely not enough time for doing any sort of editing or mastering. So Sony actually, when Sony came out with Betacam SP, they actually came out with a new, larger cassette size called the L cassette. So these small tapes, which are used for camcorders and portable VCRs like this one, these are called the S size cassette, and it is physically identical to a normal old school Betamax cassette. But then for your big studio VCRs, you had the L size cassettes. For Betacam, Betacam SP, and digital Betacam, they could record 90 minutes onto a tape. When SX came out, the L-size cassettes could record 180 minutes, 3 hours. So things got a lot better then. So yeah, this is a Betacam SX VCR. And like I said, you can use Betacam SP tapes on Betacam SX VCRs, no problem. This thing can also play Betacam and Betacam SP recordings. It can't record in those formats, but it can play them back, which is nice. And this tape, which I was given, so I had something to use this machine with, does have some Betacam SP recordings on it. So I don't want to record over those until the station manager, if he wants, has the opportunity to pull the footage off. But I have pulled the footage off myself, and we will take a look at a bit of that footage later in this video. Oh, and one last tidbit, while you can use Betacam tapes in Betamax VCRs, you shouldn't really use Betacam SP or newer tapes in Betamax VCRs because it's a metal tape, so you risk wearing down the heads prematurely on your Betamax VCR if you use the metal Betacam SP or digital Betacam or Betacam SX tape. So let's take a look at this thing. There is a lot to take in, and I'm going to put a disclaimer right now. I have not learned how to use even half the features of this thing. This is such a complex machine with a lot of functionality, I simply have not learned how to use it all yet. So in today's video, I'm only going to be demonstrating the basic features. We can play back. We will be able to record. I can do a recording test on this. Although it'll be a little bit limited. I'll explain why later. And basically, I'll show you what I can. And there will almost definitely be a follow-up video to this once I learn how to use the more complex functions. Because the purpose of this thing, this was meant to be a field editing VCR. This has editing functions. This has all the editing functionality that a studio VCR would have. but it was meant to be able to be used in the field. It's portable. It's got a built-in LCD monitor, you can see. It's got a built-in speaker. And if we look down at the control panel here, it's got all the buttons, the level controls, and jog and shuttle wheels. The jog wheel for moving the tape frame by frame in either direction, and then the shuttle wheel for fast motions. There's full rewind, there's full fast forward. And the cool thing about the shuttle control is you don't have to find the middle if you want to stop, although it does have a detent in it in the middle. But if you're anywhere in either direction and want to stop, you just press the jog control and it clicks and it mechanically places the shuttle wheel back in the middle. See? Pretty cool. And those are your tape transport controls. Just like the studio VCRs, these all have LEDs inside them that light up. Very, very cool. There's what you can choose to be in Betacam SX mode, or if you need to play back Betacam or Betacam SP, you put it in that mode. And then this switch is for the VU meters, which are right here. And Betacam SX allows for 4 channels of linear PCM audio. So there's only 2 VU meters here, and you might only be using 2 channels normally anyway, if not even just 1 channel. So you can use this switch to choose if the VU meters are showing channels 1 and 2 or channels 3 and 4. Bunch of buttons over here to control things like the time code generator, how the unit's controlled when you're doing audio or video insert editing or assemble editing. Lots of stuff on here. And then you've got 4 controls on here that pop out. When they're pushed in, the machine just auto controls them. Or if you want manual control, video gain, the chroma gain, which is basically your color saturation, your black level, which is pretty much your brightness, and your chroma phase, which is pretty much your tint. You can set all those if you want. There should be a handle across here, but someone has unscrewed this. Possibly this unit was perhaps used as part of a Sony DNW-A25 editing system. The DNW-A25, or actually the A225 is what I mean. The Sony DNW-A25 is 2 of these physically bolted together and electrically connected together at the back. And it was marketed as a complete portable editing system. 1 unit for playback, the other unit for record, and this front area would have 1 big handle bolted across both units. So maybe this wasn't originally manufactured as a single unit, maybe it was part of a A225 system, and that's why it doesn't have the handle on it. Who knows? There's your volume control for the internal speaker, and you have a 1/4-inch headphone jack. And there's your power switch. You've got 2 lugs on the side here for a shoulder strap. Up on the display here, you've got brightness and contrast controls for your display. You've got this warning light that lights up if something's wrong, if your battery power is low, because this thing can take a battery. If there's something wrong with the video signal, if there's an error that you need to look at on the screen, anything, this light either lights up or starts flashing. And then we've got some controls here that perform many functions. You've got a function LCD here that displays your tape counter and other annunciators. You also control many functions of the machine using these buttons and by what's displayed on the machine. And interestingly, this switch originally would have controlled the backlights for these 2 LCDs. But this machine has had a modification applied to it, an official Sony modification, that This switch no longer controls the backlight for these. The backlight's on all the time. It now switches the video output and the LCD between 4x3 and 16:9 mode, just at the flip of a switch. So that was a modification that you could purchase from Sony, and then they would apply that modification to your unit. This one has had it done. Pretty neat. On the back here, we have a V-mount shoe. This is a broadcast industry standard. Not just a Sony thing. Pretty much everybody uses this, and it's still used today too. This is a standard mount to hook up a power supply or a battery or some other accessory. There's your connectors right here. Two of them are positive and negative. So for this unit, this would have been used for a battery. Sony sold a battery to use for this thing. You could get up to 80 minutes of runtime on the battery. Big battery, about the size of this rectangular raised part here. Very big battery. Sony doesn't make the batteries anymore, but remember, this is a standard, and V-mount batteries are everywhere, super common to buy. They are expensive, $150, $200 per battery, but they'll fit on this machine and give you a little bit of battery power, which is cool. That is a circuit breaker. If something goes wrong and the machine's drawing too much current, that'll pop. And then on the back, there's a lot of stuff. We've got these rubber bumpers here. And here's the back of the unit. There's a cooling fan. That is your power input. Standard 4-pin. This is another standard in the broadcast industry. It's manufacturer agnostic. And you've got BNC connectors for timecode in, timecode out. SDI. SDI is the broadcast standard video input and output. And this is something I'd never knew about until I started volunteering at the TV station. SDI stands for Serial Digital Interconnect, and it's digital. So before HDMI, which had digital audio and video going over one cable, SDI's been doing the same thing since the late 80s. Digital video and audio comes through these BNC connectors, which is really cool. So you have SDI in and SDI out, and in a proper broadcast environment, these are what you'd be using to connect to other video equipment. You have composite input and output. We have XLR connectors for monitor sound output for while you're recording, audio output for playback, and audio input for an XLR microphone or some other audio device that uses XLR connectors. These switches you can turn on and off 48 volt phantom power if your microphone needs phantom power, and you can attenuate or boost the signal going into the machine if you need to. Lot of stuff going on here. I do not have the equipment to make use of this stuff. So when we do the recording test on this later, I actually will not be able to record the audio onto the machine. I have discovered that I can jam a wire into the center pin of the coax input here, so I can input a composite video signal and record it onto the Betacam tape. I can do the same for the composite output. And then for sound playback, to get sound from this thing, I have to do it through the headphone jack because I do not have an XLR converter. And getting an XLR to a standard 3.5mm jack or whatever is not as simple as just like one pin being ground and one being the signal. XLR is what's called a balanced signal, whereas something like a RCA jack or a 3.5mm jack are called unbalanced. So you have to use like a converter. Although I've read stuff that suggests that you can do it just by like connecting two pins together and calling that the ground. I don't know. I haven't toyed around with it yet. But yeah, when we do the recording test on this thing, I will be using a separate recorder to get the audio. Which is too bad, but that's how it goes. Hopefully in the future, I will get some equipment, or at least borrow some equipment, so I can do a proper recording test using a video camera that has an SDI output and an XLR microphone. Here's the remote jack. You would use this to connect to another Betacam VCR for when you're doing editing, or if this unit was part of a DNW-A25, the two machines would be connected to each other through this remote so that one machine can control the other. Here's the sticker for the unit, DNW-A25, made in Japan, 12 volts DC, 65 watts. This thing draws a lot of power. And that high power draw turned out to be an issue with this thing until I realized how much power this thing sucks. Just sitting there, turned on, not even playing a tape, this thing sucks 3.5 amps of current at 12 volts. When it's playing a tape, it uses 5 amps of current, with sometimes spiking up to 6 amps. And this turned out to be an issue because a lot of these standard 4-pin broadcast power supplies only supply 2 amps. And when me and the station manager dug this thing out of a storage room so we could test it, see if it worked, we plugged a power supply in it, and when we turned this thing on, it just turned on and off and on and off and on and off. And it turns out it was because it was tripping the power supply, sucking way too much power for that power supply to handle. But we didn't know that, because most stuff that uses this connector draws 2 amps or less of current, so this thing's sort of an oddball. Likewise, when we found that it wouldn't work with this port, we tried a V-mount power supply. Another standard, and again, they usually supply a couple of amps of current. Well, we couldn't even get a V-mount power supply on here because of these two lugs being in the way. And he thought that was weird. He was like, that's so weird because V-mount's a standard. Any V-mount power supply should fit on a V-mount system. But it turns out that Sony put these lugs here to make this physically incompatible with a V-mount power supply, because most V-mount power supplies do not supply enough current. Sony's own specific V-mount power supply for this machine does fit on here, as do batteries. So we thought that was super weird. So I brought this thing home, figuring that possibly it had died of bad capacitors. But then I tried something else. I hot-wired the battery terminals right to my Newmar 12-volt linear power supply. And it worked just fine. So it wasn't working through the 4-pin power supply input, but it was working fine through the battery terminals. So I figured, okay, this thing must have an internal power supply connected to this connector that's gone and died of bad capacitors or something. Early 2000s. It's certainly possible the early 2000s were a bad time for capacitors. Although you would hope that a piece of broadcast equipment that costs somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000 is what this thing would have cost new. You would think that hopefully they used decent capacitors, but I didn't know. But when I had this thing running off the Newmar, hot wire to the battery terminals, I noticed the Newmar getting really, really hot. And that's when I took a multimeter and realized just how much current this thing draws, and that was why this thing wasn't working on any of the power supplies we tried with it. So what I've done is take this 4-pin power cable that this thing came with, and I cut off the 4-pin connector on the other side and soldered on a cigarette lighter jack. So I can now plug this into a cigarette lighter socket on the Newmar, or in the car or whatever, and this thing can run off a cigarette lighter socket now, which makes it much more convenient for me, because here's the power supply that we tried. Sony brand power supply, so we incorrectly assumed that it was the one for this machine, but it's not. It only supplies 2 amps of current. And it had this male connector, which the female end of this connector plugged into, and then the female end on this end plugs into the socket there. Alright, I've got the machine plugged in over there. Let's power this thing on. Watch this thing light up like a Christmas tree when I turn it on. It's pretty cool. I guess I should have turned my phone light off for it, but it says initialize. Sorry. I have this thing set so that when there's no signal going into it, it shows this color bars and a 1 kilohertz tone. Just a good way to check and make sure the VCR is recording properly. So, there's our tape counter. This 525, this thing supports both NTSC and PAL. Dual mode machine, which is kind of neat. So the 525 means we're in NTSC. If we were in PAL mode, it would say 625. There's our battery gauge. It doesn't discriminate between whether you're on a battery or a power supply. It just treats everything as a battery. And then we have some functions that we can set. There's your VU meter right here. Of course, it's playing that tone. Actually, I think if I flip this switch to variable and then use the controls here, I can vary the sound a little bit. There we go. So it's putting out all 4 channels at once. Our 16:9 switch. That's how that works. You can see when I turn the jog control, it's got lights here to show what it's doing. Same thing for the shuttle control. And I can go in here and just show all the different test patterns we got. Lots of different test patterns here. Although no SMPTE bars, which I think is disappointing. It's just got the normal color bars, which is better than nothing, I guess. And then so what it's doing right now is each channel's outputting a different beep depending on which channel it is. So if we just put up channel 1 here, it's just beeping once. Put up channel 2, beeps twice. So that's that. Or silence. So that's your only choice there. Let's open up the cassette compartment. There you go. Now before I put a tape in, I can do this, and now we can see inside. And there is your Betacam VCR. And you might be able to notice, unlike Betamax, which has this really complex loading setup where the tape is like wrapped in a circular pattern around the drum and it's in the shape of a beta, that's literally why it was called Betamax. Betacam doesn't do that. It uses a VHS style loading system in the shape of an M, which was probably just for reliability, just because it's a lot simpler. But you can see big head drum, and it's got something like 8 or 10 heads on it. Let's see if I can keep count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 heads on the drum. Some of them are Betacam SX heads, some of them are Betacam SP heads, and then there's separate heads for recording and playback, and some of them are video and some of them are audio and stuff like that. We've got some audio control and erase heads, probably for Betacam tapes that have linear audio on them. So if you had a tape in here that you had to get out but you didn't have access to power, you can open this door and then you turn this red knob like 30 times and it unloads the tape and pops it out. So that's that. So let's get our tape out here. And actually I didn't rewind the tape, so I'll want to rewind it back to the beginning, because that's where an interesting piece of video that's on this tape is. I think from the 2000s. So we'll put our tape in. We're in Betacam SP mode. Oh no, we're in Betacam SX mode. So you can probably hear the head drum really loudly. The head drum spins much faster in Betacam SX mode than it does in Betacam SP mode. Let me eject it here and lift the control panel up so you can see it load. So there you go. Now I'm going to put it down into Betacam SP mode and the head drum will slow down. So there's that. And if I just hit play here, we don't have a Betacam SP recording on this part of the tape, but if I hit play, look how fast the tape moves. Very fast. And if I pause, I can use the shuttle control here. And you can see I can just move the tape back and forth at my own will. Or the shuttle control. Just back and forth. And I'll rewind it here. Pretty noisy. There it says SP02, now says 04. SP means we're in Betacam SP mode. The 04 is how many minutes of tape we have left, and it's counting up because we're rewinding. There is sound while you rewind and fast forward. Alright, so we're fully rewound. I'm going to reset the tape counter. And let's hit play. Pretty cool piece of footage on this tape.
Tape is rolling. Stand by in 5, 4. And thank you, Dennis. As you know, we're in Oromocto providing live coverage and live broadcast feed for the first time ever in the history of Oromocto on Rogers Television. It's a great night, not only for doing the live broadcast, but also with the great slate of candidates that we have in Oromocto running. It's certainly going to make it for an interesting night. I'm pleased to be joined with Dan Fraser. He's the...
So that's pretty damn cool, if you ask me. You saw some glitching in the beginning. That's not actually part of the signal. Probably the heads are getting dirty in this thing for the 20th time. I have had to clean the head drum in this thing over and over and over. I think this tape is shedding oxide and just gumming up the head drum, because I've had to clean it like a dozen times, and every time I do, so much dirt ends up on the paper. So I think the tape is just shedding gunk onto the head drum. So I might have to clean the head drum again, but it's playing perfectly right now. So we can see our VU meters. This thing right here, cond means condition, and it has a meter here as 3 bars. This just shows how good the signal is on the tape. If the tape is if the tape has failed and the recording on it is really poor quality, full of dropouts and stuff, or if the heads are dirty, this meter will drop to 2 squares or 1 square. By the time you're at 1 square, you can't see anything on the screen anymore. But there you go anyhow.
Dan Fraser, the newly acclaimed, and the
play with the jog and shuttle controls here. And the shuttle control.
Counselor for wards 4 to 6, the counselor at large. Dennis.
I'm not sure if this is the original material that was recorded on this tape or if this might be a copy. I suppose it might be a copy. Pretty cool anyway. A little broadcast from Rogers Television. And then somebody recorded SMTP E-bars on here. And you can see there's a little green servo light lit up there that lets you know that the head drum and the tape reels are servoed, so you're getting perfect speed, perfect head drum lock onto the signal, everything. That light means record inhibit, that turns on either because the record protection tab on the tape is set, or the tape, or you're in Betacam SP mode, so you can't record onto the tape in that mode. Or if you have this record inhibit switch turned on, that'll keep you from recording and it'll cause that light to light up. These buttons with the lights on them are really cool. They look incandescent. They've got a warm white color to them, but I believe they are LEDs. And you can see a green LED behind the blue stop button there. Of course, blue LEDs weren't common when this thing was made. But yeah, this thing works awesome. I'm very, very, very happy. And I'm not sure if there is anything more to show on here that I know how to do. So I say, let's fast forward back to the end of the tape where there's no signal recorded, and then I will hook a camcorder up to this thing. Unfortunately, it has to be through composite, so you won't get a true representation of the video quality of this thing. I'm going to stop that just because it's annoying to yell over. And I have to record the audio separately because I currently have not devised a method of getting audio into this thing. And we are now recording on the Sony model DNW-A25 Betacam SX VCR from 2001, a retired piece of broadcast equipment. I chose not to record any audio live. I'm doing this in the editing process. It's just easier. So once again, this was recorded through the composite input of the VCR and played back into the camcorder through the composite output. So the quality here is not nearly as good as you would get with a proper transfer using the SDI input and output. So once I get the proper equipment to make use of the SDI input and output, I'll do a follow-up video and we'll do another recording test, and you'll see that the quality will be a lot better. There's what the connections look like on the back using wires and alligator clips, but it works. It's what I had. Something I forgot to mention when we were looking inside here earlier. If you look back there, you'll see one of those awful head drum cleaners that engages with the head drum. And every time I come across one of these in a video, I say the same thing. Get rid of these if you can. They do more harm than good, especially once they're caked up with dirt, which, as you can see, that one definitely is. Sony actually recommended replacing that roller every 1,000 hours of use, but who knows if it was ever replaced on this machine. So I have disabled that. So it was a little bit trickier, a little scary to do, but I did do it. How the roller is engaged is there is a lobe on this worm gear that this metal arm engages with. So when this little worm gear turns, it pushes this arm and it pushes the cleaner against the head. I took some pliers and I bent that arm just enough so that it doesn't come in contact with that lobe anymore. So I have disabled the head drum cleaner on this machine. And even on something like this, unless you have access to a new one and know how to install it, I would recommend doing the exact same thing. Once those rollers get dirty, they do way more harm than good. So we'll take a look at the menus here. When you press the menu button, you get this on-screen button. And you can use the shuttle control to go through it, or the jog control rather. You can use the shuttle as well. So there's our operating hours on this thing. The lifetime count, the resettable counter's never been reset, so this thing's probably never had any maintenance done to it. This unit has kinda high hours on it, which isn't a surprise. 8,937 total hours that this thing has been turned on. 2,484 drum hours, 1,226 tape hours, so that's hours that the tape's moving. And it has threaded the tape 11,749 times. I looked on eBay to see how this unit stacked up to other units, and most of the units I saw for sale on eBay had less hours than this. Some of them had far less hours, like hundreds of hours instead of thousands of hours. So I think this has been a well-used machine. I don't know what the maintenance schedule is for a Betacam SX machine. A head drum cleaning roller is supposed to be replaced every 1,000 hours. But now that this thing's retired, and now that it's in my possession where it's not going to get a tenth of the use that it got when it was in production use, I don't think I have to worry about the head drum or other things wearing out on this thing. If it ever does happen, I'd be very surprised. But anyway, yeah. A well-used machine, but still working perfect nonetheless, which I'm glad for. And then in the LCD panel here, there's a lot of settings here which I am not sure what a lot of them do. And you have to you choose one of these options and then press the up and down buttons to select that, and then you hit page. So there's like 100 different setting pages here. Dolby noise reduction, so that only applies to Betacam and Betacam SP recordings. If you know that if you know whether or not the recordings were done with Dolby noise reduction, you can turn that on or off to match that. Beta and Betacam SP use Dolby C noise reduction. Comfy is confidence, so this is a neat feature. When this is turned on, while you're recording, the image you'll see on the screen is not actually from the video input, it's from the recording on the tape. So it's like my Iowa cassette deck over there. You can monitor the recording as it's being recorded, because it has separate record and playback heads. Well, this does too, so if you have that turned on, which I should have turned on now that I think of it, you can literally see what the recording looks like as soon as it's recorded. So if it's glitching out because your head drum's dirty or your tape's bad or something, you'll know while it's recording, not afterwards, and that's really good. And then pre-read and Zebra's kind of weird. It basically just tells you what parts of the video are in full modulation or 50% modulation. Like when I set it to 50%, all these parts are 50% video signal modulation, and then 80%, and then this white part here is 100% modulated, which makes sense. For the longest, this was by default is set to 100%, and for the longest time I had no idea why white parts of the video signal were doing this. I didn't know if something was wrong, and I found that if I turned the video gain control down, it goes away, obviously, because there's not as much modulation. So I thought maybe something was going on with the video circuitry, but it's not. This is the way it's supposed to be. So I just keep that turned off because it's annoying. And then you get all this stuff here. I showed you all the different test patterns that you can put on this. I think that's pretty much all that I can demonstrate with what I've learned of this thing so far. Oh, one other thing. So I mentioned the whole power issue, and it turns out this thing sucks a crap ton of power, which is why I couldn't get it to turn on initially. There was another problem this thing had that I had to fix. Under this panel, you can unscrew it with 4 screws. There's a bunch of cards inside. The circuitry of this thing is in a bunch of cards that slot into a bunch of slots, which is really good for maintenance. And on one of those cards is a lithium backup battery that saves the settings. And this thing being 19 years old, obviously that lithium battery was dead. And while you can use the machine with a dead battery, the entire time it's turned on, it would show this big error message on the screen talking about an NVRAM error, because the battery backs up the non-volatile RAM that stores the settings. And it would obstruct the video, so you couldn't see what was going on behind it because it took up most of the screen. And there's no way to clear it except if you replace that battery. So the battery that this thing uses, it's a really weird, I've never seen one like it before. It's made by ST Microelectronics, and it's called a Snap Hat battery, which I think's hilarious because it's almost like Snapchat, but it's called a Snap Hat battery. It's a yellow cuboid battery. You know, it's like one of those Dallas real-time clocks, except this thing is literally just a battery and a crystal. So it's this epoxied battery crystal thing. And you can order new ones today. ST Microelectronics still make them. Here in Canada, I can get one from DigiKey for $10, and I will be doing that. But in the meantime, I did a little redneck fix just so I could get this thing working. I used my rotary tool, ground away at the epoxy until I got to the battery terminals, and I just soldered a CR2032 battery to the battery terminals that I exposed. And that has satisfied this thing, so it's working for now. But I will be ordering a new Snap Hat battery just so I can give this thing a proper fix, and then it'll be good to go for another 10 years or however long that battery decides to last. But that battery's on one of these removable cards, which is really nice. Just open up this panel, pull out the card, and you're good to go. A little scary. The first time I did this, I guess the card wasn't making a perfect connection, and this thing wouldn't boot up anymore. You'd turn it on, and it would just show a green screen. And I thought, oh god, I've broken it with static discharge or something. But no, the card just wasn't making a great connection. I reseated all the cards, and it came back to life, and it's been working fine since then. So there's that. But yeah, that's all that I can demonstrate with this thing. It's all I know how to use. Now, let's go to the computer and look at some documentation. So the first thing I'm going to show is this sales brochure from Sony for the DNW-A25, A225, and an earlier revision of the A225, the A220. Unlike what I usually do, I'm not going to go through and read everything because this is 10 pages, so it's quite a lot. But I'll just scroll through it here, maybe point a couple of things out, and then you can pause and read if you want to. So there's the A225. You can see it's got one big handle bolted across both of them. Portable editing system for news applications. So there's what a battery looks like. And there's what the Betacam SX cassettes look like. They're yellow in color to distinguish them from Betacam SP cassettes. There's the DNW-A25 control panel. You can see, unlike the 225, which is two identical machines, the A220 actually used two different machines, which is kind of funny. That's the Sony DSR-70, which is a DV-cam portable VCR. You can see it looks literally every bit as identical to the DNW-A25. And there was this attachment that you could put on the Betacam SX unit to be able to connect it to the DV cam unit for editing. There's one of the power supplies that you could use with the machine, the AC DN2A. It goes on the V-mount, and then it's got its own V-mount, so you could attach a battery and it could charge the battery. It's got an AC plug on it. Delivers up to 150 watts of power. So you could use it not only to power the VCR, but to power other things too, camcorder, whatever. And there's the other AC adapter, the AC550C, which was just a standalone unit that plugged into the 4-pin port. Zoom in here. There's what the remote control looked like. You could get carrying cases for it. Pretty neat. Two different cleaning cassettes. I don't know what the difference between them is. This one says for digital Betacam, and I think this one's just a general purpose one, so beats me. And again, the Betacam SX tape, you could get them down to 12 minutes in length, which would play for 6 minutes on a Betacam SP machine. Kind of funny. And I think this page is repeating. Yes, it is. So there's that one. This next document I'll show here is out of an old BH Photo Video catalog. Here it's talking about Betacam SX. So you can read through that if you want. Current BCT-MA Betacam SP metal particle tape cassettes can be used for Betacam SX recording, assuring wide availability of recording media. For superior digital performance at reduced cost, metal particle tape has also been developed specifically for Betacam SX recording. I'd be surprised if the tape is actually any different, but maybe it is. Here's some Betacam SX camcorders. I don't know when this document would be from. Probably early 2000s if I had to guess. There's a Betacam SX Studio VCR. There's the big boy. Probably somewhere around $50,000 to buy one of those when they were new. There's another field recorder they had, the DNW-A28. It's basically an A25 without the screen and the controls all placed on the front of it in a more conventional manner. There's the DNW-A25, A225, and A220. £14 in some is what the A25 weighs. And that's it. That was actually the very last page of this document. So there you go.